Lockean tradition, one has one's basic individual rights, which governments are instituted to secure in a human community, so that one has moral space. This is a term that was coined by Robert Nozick in his famous book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia. The moral space means that you have an area of personal authority or jurisdiction, to use the juridical model, where other people may not enter and dictate to you what you will be doing. That doesn't mean you don't have moral responsibilities. You may very well have moral responsibilities within this moral space. You may have responsibilities toward your friends, toward your country, toward your neighborhood, toward the environment, even toward animals. But the point of talking about rights is that you are the one to make the decision whether you will follow through with these responsibilities or you will neglect them and ignore them. It's up to you. This is the whole idea of having rights. You have rights to be able to be in charge of your conduct, of your actions, so that other people are kept at bay. And only if you permit them to enter your moral space, like when you marry them or you join a club or you otherwise engage with other people voluntarily, do they now have permission to have an influence over you? It's kind of like when you go to the dentist. You give him permission to poke about in your mouth. But if the dentist came up to you on the street and started to poke around in your mouth, he wouldn't be acting like a dentist. He would be a criminal. We understand this in the common sense way, that when people, for example, subject you to certain discomforts, certain things that you don't ordinarily welcome from strangers, they need to get your permission. A coach needs to get your permission to make you run around the track, and even to yell at you and insist that you finish the 5 or how many kilometers that he's assigned you to run, and he may even be very rough on you, but in the final analysis, he's going to say, you agreed to that, you hired me, you joined my team, it is because you have given your consent. So the rights framework of community relations secures for us a certain area of independence, where even when we are very much encumbered by others, in the sense that they're close to us, they're near us, they're always about us, nevertheless, our fundamental freedom to choose to act the way we will act remains ours. That's the whole idea of rights, that within a community, these rights secure for us a certain measure of independence. And of course there is argument within the classical liberal or even just liberal tradition as to how much independence is appropriate, but that's the point of rights talk, is to say, look, this is where I make decisions and not you. And why is this important? Well, again, in this particular tradition, going all the way back to William of Ockham, the whole idea of rights has to do with making it possible for you to do the right thing on your own initiative, that you are the agent of your conduct, for better or for worse. Rights talk does not imply anything subjective about morality. Rights talk simply says that you need to make the choice to do the right thing, even if it is perfectly possible for us to know what that right thing is. I may know, for example, that you ought to work hard in a class, but it does not authorize me to go and force you to work hard in that class. not unless you have hired me as your tutor or your coach. This is a kind of a notion that is obviously very novel and very radical in terms of the totality of human history, because it for the first time identifies individuals as equal to one another in the most important respect, in their moral independence. In the past, it was generally understood that there are certain classes that divide people, and the people in the upper classes may dictate the conduct of those in the lower classes. Even today, of course, there are many places in the world where various forms of monarchy or feudalism or entrenched class structures prevail, where it is understood by those who participate in this that some people are on top and have the authority by virtue of either some religious doctrine or some other doctrine, maybe historical necessity, whatever, to dictate to others what they will do. But the classical liberals have brought in this revolutionary idea, which was articulated, though not fully implemented by any means within the West, by the American founders, who said that we're all created equal in the respect of having rights like everybody else. And so nobody is authorized to govern another person, not as an adult. Now, as a child, that's a different story, and we can talk about that. But as adults, we are sovereign. It's not the king who is sovereign. It is not God who's sovereign. It is not society or even the democratic majority that is sovereign. It is you and I who are sovereign. And it is this rights talk that supports this notion that we are in charge of our own conduct, because it matters. Morality matters to us. Morality, in fact, is probably the most important thing in human life, because ultimately, whatever else matters, efficiency, riches, power, influence, you name it, celebrity, it doesn't cut much ice, it doesn't amount to much significance if you are fundamentally morally corrupt. So it is a very important thing for human beings to be able to excel morally. It basically means the difference between a successful life and an unsuccessful life, insofar as they have some power over it. I mean, obviously, if a brick falls on your head, you can be morally excellent, but you'll be dead nevertheless. But it's not your fault, because, you know, unless you are very reckless and walk around in dangerous areas. But generally speaking, morality pertains to those things over which we have control, and we are responsible to manage those things in such a way that they meet with the standards of moral excellence. Now, this is what rights talk in a community supposedly pertain to. This is what it is all about, to have rights. I have my right to my life and not you, so that I make the decisions about my life, and I either do well at making those decisions or do badly at making those decisions. And then when people read the eulogy at my funeral, they will make remarks about that, presumably. And so with everybody else. And they were in your biography, or your friends, when they gossip about you. Ultimately, really, what matters most is whether you are a morally good person versus a morally bad person. And there's a continuum between that, of course, and we know that from common sense. We have friends who are nearly morally perfect and nearly morally corrupt, and you can just you can apply almost everything that I've said to your life and to the community in which